Welcome. OSINT analysts have gathered yet another round of evidence showing official purchases of Starlink equipment by Russian companies.
Yes, and a major publication on Skylinker really breaks down the investigation and the proof they've collected.
Skylinker has written a lot about the aggressor's use of Starlink before. So let's get into what's new here.
Well, our mission today is to really dissect this uncomfortable reality that the OSINT community has confirmed. We're talking about the systemic acquisition and deployment of Starlink technology by the aggressor.
And systemically is the key word, isn't it? This isn't just a few terminals being smuggled across the border. We're looking at official Russian paperwork, at bureaucratic slip-ups that basically reveal this entire structured parallel import pipeline.
Exactly. This deep dive is all about that paper trail. For years, the story has been about this gray market.
Right.
But what's new here and what makes this so damning is that we are tracing the supply through official channels that Russia itself is validating. We're seeing government rubber stamps on these forms.
Even if the information on the forms is, well, all over the place.
That's the thing. Let's start with the main piece of evidence. These Russian conformity declarations.
Okay, so why is this specific piece of paper so important? Why is it the key?
Because without this declaration, you can't legally import, sell, or use the equipment in Russia. It's this mandatory bureaucratic step.
To make it all legal.
Right. The companies bringing in the Starlinks have to declare what it is, who made it, and where it's from. The goal is validation, but the result for us is a paper-based smoking gun.
And this is where the mistakes you mentioned come into play. It seems like the people filling out the forms weren't being too careful.
That's the most fascinating part. Some declarations correctly name SpaceX, but so many others have these glaring inconsistencies.
Like what?
Well, instead of listing the actual manufacturer, they'll list one of the intermediaries in the chain. Or sometimes, and this is bizarre, a completely unrelated address.
Which suggests they're just rushing to get them through.
It suggests high-volume, rushed, parallel importing. The logistics providers are basically improvising the paperwork to make the hardware look compliant.
So let's talk about the most striking example of this. The declaration filed on June 27, 2025, for a Starlink marine navigation kit.
This is so crucial because this isn't the standard dish you'd put on your house. The document lists the manufacturer as just Starlink.
Just Starlink, not SpaceX.
Exactly. And when investigators looked up the address provided Rheinzath for in Demiren, they found it belongs to Castor Marine.
Castor Marine. That's a legitimate Dutch company, an official reseller of Starlink maritime services.
That's it. So you have a Russian declaration filed to legalize an import that points directly back to an official European reseller.
What does that imply for Castor Marine? I mean, are they knowingly involved?
The published materials don't say if they knew the final destination, but it implies their supply chain, intentionally or not, was leveraged for this pipeline. The paperwork, their own address, puts them right in the supply path.
And you said this specific kit is important for military users. Why that one?
We're talking about the flat high-performance kit. It is way more expensive, maybe 7 times the cost of a standard one.
Okay.
But it's designed for mobility. It offers connectivity while in motion on a truck, a ship, or, a military vehicle.
And Russian sellers are advertising this?
Openly. According to the Polish materials, they're pushing these with the Global Priority Plan, bragging about worldwide coverage and support for operations in seas and oceans around the world. It's clearly being marketed for warfare.
And this sloppiness seems to be a pattern. I remember reading about another finding from July 2024 for the standard Starlink kits.
Yes. That one listed the manufacturer's address as a Tesla dealership in Amsterdam.
You're kidding? A Tesla dealership?
It's almost funny if it wasn't so serious. It suggests that when the real address was too risky to use, they just plugged in another address linked to Elon Musk in the Netherlands. It's a clumsy attempt to hide the real chain of custody.
Okay, so we've traced the paperwork from these mistakes back to Europe. Let's follow the actual physical journey now. The declarations also pointed to the logistics companies, right?
Yes, this is how we get from where it started to how it traveled. The whole import structure relies on these hubs in places with, let's say, lax controls.
And the filings pointed to 2 main hubs.
The United Arab Emirates and Hong Kong.
Let's start with the UAE. Everyone knows Dubai is a massive shipping hub. What company did the paperwork name?
A declaration from May 13th, 2024 for Starlink routers listed the manufacturer not as SpaceX, but as Ameris Group FZE.
Ameris Group.
They're a freight forwarding company in Sharjah, UAE. Now, this is the key. They are not the manufacturer. But by listing them there, the paperwork confirms they are the logistical gateway for the Russian buyer.
So the paper trail is there, but was there any physical proof?
Absolutely. This is where it gets really solid. Just a few days after that declaration was filed, photos popped up on a Russian Telegram channel. They showed Starlink shipments with big stickers on them, clearly showing the Imaros Cargo brand and their website. It perfectly confirms the paper trail.
Wow. So Imaros is the forwarder, moving the product from somewhere, through the UAE and into the Russian system.
It's a textbook example of how this parallel import infrastructure works. It shields the original supplier, but gives the aggressor reliable access.
And that makes sense. The second hub you mentioned was Hong Kong.
Correct. On March 6, 2025, a company in Novosibirsk filed a declaration listing the manufacturer as Dai Global Limited.
The Dai Global Limited.
The address is for a corporate management service, but the firm itself says it's a distributor for big electronics brands like DJI. So they're acting as this financial or consolidation point to move high-value electronics into Russia.
And what's so telling here is that these routes, Dubai and Hong Kong, they're not even a secret. The Russian retailers are open about it.
Precisely. You can go to sites like Starlink777.ru, and they're advertising wholesale Starlink purchases. They openly state the products are from direct shipments from Dubai and Hong Kong.
It's not a secret. It's a business model.
It's a normalized, systemic, and openly advertised pipeline feeding the Russian military.
Okay, so if the supply is systemic, the military application must be too. This has moved way beyond just a few isolated cases. How are these terminals being used on the front lines?
They're being integrated at an operational level. The most important finding is the confirmed integration of Starlink panels into Russian UAVs.
Drones.
Specifically, variants of the Molniya-2 reconnaissance and suicide attack drone.
Putting a terminal inside a drone sounds complicated. What's the strategic advantage?
It gives them persistent, long-range communication and control. Unlike a standard radio link that you can jam, the satellite link means the drone can operate deep behind enemy lines, sending back high-quality video and targeting data the entire time.
And there's physical proof of this.
There is. According to the published materials, a damaged Molniya-2 was found near Pokrovsk, and inside it had a Starlink mini terminal.
The Mini, the smallest one. Perfect for fitting inside a drone.
Exactly. It was connected to a dedicated mini PC via a USB to Ethernet adapter. This wasn't some crude hack job. This was an engineered solution.
That's chilling. It shows how fast they can take a civilian gadget and turn it into a core piece of military hardware.
And it's not an isolated case. The systemic use is confirmed elsewhere. It's mentioned on the official GUR war sanctions project. And Russian drone makers are now openly showing Starlink as a standard option at military expos. Skylinker documented that back in September 2025.
To really understand the scale of this, that Latvian court case the investigation mentioned is a perfect example.
It's a perfect microcosm of the whole problem. In Riga, 4 people were charged for shipping about 200,000 euros worth of military goods.
What was in the shipment?
Optical sights, ballistic calculators, and over 60 complete Starlink mini kits.
60. And the really shocking part wasn't just that they were shipping the hardware.
No, it was that they were supplying ready-to-work units. They weren't just moving boxes.
What does that mean?
They were activating them. They used pre-activated European SIM cards and accounts, often registered to fake names. This means the Russian unit gets a fully functional terminal with an active European account, which bypasses any geofencing SpaceX might try to put up. It's an end-to-end service for aggression.
Which brings us to the toughest part of this deep dive, the strategic challenge. If the problem is systemic, the solution has to be. But Ukraine seems to be in a really difficult position to do anything about it.
It's a profound regulatory failure that was born out of necessity. In 2022, when Starlink first arrived, speed was everything, so the process was totally deregulated.
It was a lifesaver at the time.
A lifesaver then, but now, with over 200,000 terminals in the country, most are private imports. It's a huge gray zone.
So any attempt to regulate the network now would risk disrupting communications for civilians and for your own military forces using legitimate terminals.
That's the catch-22. Ukraine doesn't have the regulatory tools other countries use. Israel, for example, needs security approval to activate terminals in certain zones. Kazakhstan requires all traffic to land in the country, giving them sovereign control. Ukraine has none of that for LEO satellite services.
And this feels like a vulnerability that goes way beyond Ukraine. The investigation raises huge red flags for Europe.
It absolutely does. The conclusion it reaches is pretty sobering. If a terrorist or any hostile actor can easily buy a Starlink Mini in Europe, which is easier than buying a registered SIM card, and then strap it to an explosive drone.
Like a Molnia 2 or a Lancet.
Europe is critically unprepared for that threat.
But doesn't Europe have advanced electronic warfare or REB capabilities? Can't they just jam the signal?
Their systems are world-class, but they're mostly legacy systems. They're built to jam classic radio channels or GPS.
Hmm.
They were not designed to fight a low Earth orbit satellite constellation with adaptive modulation and narrow beams.
So it's a completely different kind of threat.
A fundamentally different one. Jamming a LEO link requires a much more complex architecture that just isn't deployed across most of the EU today.
So a civilian technology built for connection has become a military threat that has outpaced the defense capabilities of an entire continent.
That's the core takeaway. The analysis argues that Ukraine has to move from deregulation to clear, mandatory rules for operators like SpaceX, even if it causes temporary disruptions.
Because otherwise, it just remains a freely available piece of military infrastructure for the aggressor.
And this isn't just about Starlink. We have to look ahead. Future LEO systems, Amazon LEO, Telesat Lightspeed, they're all going to pose the exact same dual-use risk. Regulatory clarity has to come first.
It's just fascinating that it all started with sloppy paperwork. Those addresses for Dutch resellers and Tesla dealerships. They gave us the map to a global military supply chain.
The paper trail confirms the logistics, and the evidence from the field confirms the military use. And that regulatory vacuum is the final critical vulnerability that has to be fixed for both Ukraine's security and for Europe's.
So our final provocative thought for you. The question is no longer if a Starlink-equipped drone attack is possible on European soil, but when. And which countries, Ukraine, the Baltics, maybe a major EU nation, will be the first to implement the sovereign regulatory solutions needed in 2026 to neutralize this threat. The clock is ticking. If you find these overviews, analytics, podcasts, and video lectures from Skylink are interesting, we ask you to support the project with a paid subscription, which is much better for our educational work than the donations many are used to. Any support you give is converted into training materials, educational podcasts, and video lectures that you can already find on the Skylinker site or YouTube channel. Practically all the money received is transparently converted into information and knowledge for the defenders of Ukraine.